настоящий источник влияния.
Jim Acosta is over at the White House. Jim, I have a copy of the letter that Kristen obtained, that CNN obtained, and it's interesting because at the bottom, the letter is written by Emily Murphy, Administrator, U.S. General Services Administration. It's addressed to the Honorable Joseph R. Biden Jr., the President-elect of the United States, but it's CC'd. If you take a look at the bottom, among those who got copies of this letter, Mark Meadows, the White House Chief of Staff, Chris Liddell, a legal advisor over there, Edward Kaufman from the Biden team, Jeffrey Zients from the Biden team. So the White House knows about this. Are you getting any reaction?
Out right now, but if Mark Meadows, the Chief of Staff, has been CC'd on this, that means that the White House has been notified and this process is underway. This is the process that a lot of Americans have been waiting on for weeks now, and it appears it's going to get started now, as Kristen Holmes was just reporting. I can tell you, though, talking to a Trump advisor just a short while ago, that the writing was on the wall when this decision came out of Michigan, that the Board of State Canvassers there was going to certify the results for Joe Biden in that state. And even this latest news out of Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the Supreme Court decision there allowing some absentee ballots to be counted. I mean, Wolf, they were just losing over and over and over again. In the words of this White House advisor, this is the end of the road for the president. Now, in the meantime, one of the things that we're going to have to keep our eyes on, Wolf, is yes, this may be the end of the road for the president's attempts to sabotage the election, but we have not even gotten into the universe of the potential sabotage of the incoming administration. And that is obviously something that the Biden transition team is keenly aware of. They're going to be looking out for. And in the meantime, we're waiting to find out what exactly the White House is going to be saying. There's no statement yet from Kayleigh McEnany, the White House press secretary, who's been doubling as a Trump campaign advisor and spreading some of this misinformation about what's been happening with these election results. And my guess, Wolf, is knowing what we know about how the Trump team has been responding thus far, they are not going to, I think many of them are not going to want to deal with the reality of the situation over here. I will tell you, though, that there are staffers inside the White House, and I talked to a White House official about this earlier today, a Trump advisor about this earlier today, who both said that, yes, there are some staffers inside the Trump White House who are already looking for jobs outside the administration. So they know what's coming, Wolf, and this is the beginning of that process.
It certainly is. This is exactly what the Biden transition team needed to be able to get very, very critically important national security information, healthcare information, in order to help them better prepare for January 20th, Inauguration Day. Jeff Zeleny is in Wilmington, Delaware. So any reaction yet from the Biden team, Jeff, to this really important news that the formal transition can actually begin?
Wolf, it's certainly welcome news to them, and they have been thinking privately and quietly. It's been moving in this direction, but they did have their eye on Michigan. That is what, of course, moved this forward. But as of this moment, there is no official response from them. But we have been talking to people throughout the day, and one thing we've been hearing is that this validates, in their view, their decision to not take legal action. We've been talking here for the last more than 2 weeks or so, largely here in Wilmington, about the decision, should they take legal action or not. And it was the president-elect, I'm told, who was taking a cooler temperature throughout all of this. We've heard him speak about this publicly, to not take legal action, to try and build up a public campaign. And that is what the Biden campaign decided to do over these last 2.5 weeks or so. Build a public relations campaign, if you will, to get Republicans and Democrats alike to write op-eds, to put a pressure on this government to get to this point. So it's unclear what effect that had. But we have seen Republican senators really coming out all day long, Lamar Alexander and others, saying that Joe Biden is indeed president-elect. So from the Biden campaign's point of view, first and foremost, they were moving forward, announcing cabinet secretaries, West Wing staffers, and not taking legal action because they thought that could, potentially tie them up. So they are certainly feeling validated about this, Wolf, and as soon as we get a comment from them, we'll come back to you.
Jeff Zeleny, stand by. Jim Acosta, stand by. I want to bring in our special correspondent, Jamie Gangel, and our CNN political commentator, Bakari Sellers. He's the author of the new book, My Vanishing Country. Bakari, this is really significant, the fact that this transition can now begin. This is precisely what the Biden transition team needed, all the practical information that they will now get to help them better prepare for taking office on January 20th. What's your reaction to this significant development? Emily Murphy, the administrator of the General Services Administration, now finally, nearly 3 weeks after Election Day, finally acknowledging that the president-elect, Joe Biden, is the apparent winner of this election. I don't know if
Thank you so much, Wolf.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I got you. Somebody was in my ear. I'm sorry. But no, my reaction is that Joe Biden has won the presidency again. And this is a big day. For anybody who thinks it's not, this is genuinely a big day. I know they're excited about it because finally the transition, it actually can begin. It can begin in earnest. We do know, however, that Donald Trump's going to try to do absolutely everything within his power to prevent this from happening. I want everybody to understand Emily Murphy in this story, she is not a hero in this story at all. In fact, this is her duty, something that she should have done a couple of weeks ago, but I guess one can say better late than never. And the final piece of this, Wolf, even more importantly, is I think that this bears out what the president-elect has been doing for a long period of time. Joe Biden has said for the longest that his campaign was going to be disciplined, his presidency was going to be disciplined, and he was going to build some consensus, Democrats and Republicans together to move this country forward. This was a perfect example of that. The Joe Biden presidency is not built for Snapchat, it's not built for Twitter, it's built to govern. And
will allow the Biden transition team to make some significant progress moving forward. The president-elect, the vice president-elect, they'll get access to highly classified, that presidential daily brief from the U.S. intelligence community, and the incoming Coronavirus Advisory Council will now be able to speak with the outgoing experts and learn more about potential vaccine delivery to millions and millions of Americans. This is really significant what the GSA administrator has just signed.
It is a critical moment for the transition. It's also a critical moment for Republicans. You may have caught me looking at my phone. I just heard from a source close to the White House, it is over, quote, this is a blaring wake-up call for the president. and from a senior Republican official based on calls today with heartbroken and angry Trump supporters. I can tell you the damage he has done by claiming this election was stolen is unparalleled and indefensible. I think what we saw today with Michigan and with Pennsylvania, and now with this announcement from the GSA, is that today, 16 days after we called the election for Joe Biden, is really a turning point. A turning point certainly for the Biden campaign, but also a turning point for the Trump White House and the Republican Party.
All right, we're getting reaction from the President of the United States. Jim Acosta is joining us right now. Jim, the President has just tweeted.
Yeah, no surprise, Wolf. This first reaction coming in, a tweet from the President. It says, and I can read it to you, it says, "I want to thank Emily Murphy at GSA for her steadfast dedication and loyalty to our country. She has been harassed, threatened, and abused, and I do not want to see this happen to her, her family, or employees of GSA. Our case strongly continues. We will keep up the good fight, and I believe we will prevail. Nevertheless, in the best interest of our country, I am recommending that Emily and her team do what needs to be done with regard to initial protocols, and have told my team to do the same." Wolf, that is interesting on a couple of counts. One is that the President at the moment appears to be showing some openness to this transition going forward. That, I think, is of some note. This is not a combative sounding statement. It's obviously not in touch with reality when he says, "I believe will prevail," and so on. But he is showing some openness to this transition period starting, and the GSA cooperating with the Biden transition team. I will tell you, Wolf, I just spoke with a senior White House official in the last couple of minutes who said that this news came as a surprise to some inside the building. They are learning this for the first time on CNN. And while this official said, obviously there are staffers like this person who will be cooperating with the Biden transition team, this person couldn't speak for everybody in the building, but that this is an indication, obviously, coming from the GSA, that this transition from one administration, the outgoing Trump administration, to the incoming Biden administration is starting. Wolf?
It's interesting, Jim, because if you read carefully what the President has just tweeted, he seems to be speaking out of both sides of his mouth. On the one hand, he says, "Our case strongly continues. We will keep up the good fight, and I believe we will prevail." But then he goes on to say, "Nevertheless, in the best interest of our country, I am recommending that Emily and her team do what needs to be done with regard to initial protocols, and have told my team to do the same." Meaning that he has told his team, cooperate with the Biden transition, make sure they are fully briefed on a wide range of issues in order to enable the incoming team to be prepared on January 20th when Joe Biden is sworn in as the 46th President of the United States.
Emily Murphy's letter never refers to Joe Biden as the president-elect. Emily Murphy's letter never refers to Joe Biden as the apparent successful candidate for president. Emily Murphy's letter never says that she has ascertained that Joe Biden is the apparent successful candidate.
We don't practice because
Now, Peter Feuchtwanger was a very important piano teacher internationally. He lived in London. He passed away, sadly, a couple of years ago. And the piano world lost a very, very important guru-like figure, I would say, in Peter. Now, my history with him, I wasn't really a student of his, but I did study the exercises, his exercises, with him. And I found them enormously beneficial, and I passed them on to students. Now, this is my take on them. You will see I've got a series of videos coming up here with some of the exercises that I have selected that I think are the best of the lot. And so it's most of them. A couple I didn't really quite get. But if I just give you a little bit of background into how I came to know Peter. I was already a young professional, teaching piano at the Purcell School and various other places in London, based in London. So I was already sort of starting out in my teaching career. And I met Peter at a lecture. He was giving a lecture demonstration, masterclass actually, on Beethoven Opus 110, and I went back to meet him afterwards and said how wonderful it was to meet him, and he said, oh, nice to meet you too, and would you happen to be free next week to come to Germany and sit in on my classes in Germany? And it happened to be summer holidays, and I was young, and I thought, yes, let's do it. So I just went across to Germany, sat in on his master classes, and on the last day he was working with a student in a small sort of teaching room. So we were all sitting around the piano and he was demonstrating the exercises. The master classes had been more or less kind of on the music, but the last day was on his exercises. And I can remember being totally shocked by these, really shocked by these exercises, to the point that I had to leave the room halfway through. I was seeing all this collapsed stuff, all the opposite of what I knew to be true about, or believed to be true about piano technique and piano playing. So I can remember leaving the room and walking up and down the hallway, sort of like this, what on earth is this man doing? And I couldn't really accept what he was doing. So anyway, I went back to the room at the end, didn't want to appear rude. And then, what on earth is this man doing? So I can remember leaving the room and walking up and down the hallway, sort of like this, what on earth is this man doing? And I couldn't really accept what he was doing. So anyway, I went back to the room at the end, didn't want to appear rude. And then after the class, he said, you must come visit me in London and I'll show you my exercises. Yeah, I'm up for that. I've always been inquisitive and curious about piano methodology. So we made the appointment and I went round one afternoon. I can remember it being a summer afternoon, and the first thing I was struck by was that I could not raise the piano stool more than about that much, because he'd sawn the legs off both piano stools to prevent anybody sitting high. He liked people to sit both piano stools to prevent anybody sitting high. He liked people to sit low so that they could use, not this supported muscular position, but rather low, hanging like this, if you can imagine, and then everything coming from the arm, which was like a dead arm almost. There was no kind of bracing in the arm, no posturing in the arm. So one kind of hung from the keyboard, whether you liked it or not. You couldn't say, well, excuse me, Peter, but I like to sit higher. You had to sit low. And then the exercises themselves, when he showed me them, I was thinking, what on earth are these? Where is this coming from? But I was very dutiful and respectful, as I still am, of them. And I was reeling when I came out of his apartment an hour or so later. He'd given me a bunch of them. I don't think he gave me all of them, but he gave me a bunch of them. And he said, come back in a couple of days or next week or whenever it was, and we'll go through them again. But the funny thing was, when I left to go down to the underground station at South Kensington, in those days there was a big advertising sort of hoarding there, advertising various products. And there was one on that particular occasion advertising a famous brand of sneakers, trainers. I won't say what it was, but the slogan was, everything you know is wrong. And I thought, well, this is interesting, because I've just come out from an experience with this kind of guru figure, and I'm being told subliminally, everything you know is wrong. But I was prepared to go through this adventure. So there I went every day, practiced these things to the best of my ability, went back to see him many times actually over the course of several weeks, maybe several months, where he would refine what I was doing until I'd got to the point where I could start to feel, oh yes, this is really putting my playing into kind of neutral. So it felt like I was doing virtually nothing when I played the piano using his exercises, which felt a little bit strange after my Russian-based background, a muscular-based approach to piano playing. So but he never explained what he was doing. He never said, now this exercise is for this, or this does this. You just had to kind of, I would say blindly follow, but trustingly follow what he was doing. Maybe he explained to other people what these exercises did, but he never explained it to me. And I practiced them, and I noticed that after I practiced them for a few weeks, my playing felt a whole lot freer. And I guess really what they do is they do minimal effort, minimal, what's the word I'm looking for? The opposite of tension, if you want. So any tension that there might be in the playing, or any over-exertion that there might be in your playing, would be flagged up having done these exercises first. So if you weren't one of his regular students and you used these exercises, you'd get great benefit from them in, I would say, the long term, in the medium term, certainly not after a couple of days. And I used them in my teaching, and I found that very, very good for the beginnings of tension-related injuries or problems that were related to overexertion. And again, I would very much recommend them to people who are overdoing things. So it just basically puts the playing in neutral, so that when you come back to your regular way of playing, everything just feels looser and freer and easier. But the trick is to sit low, to do the thing that you think is awful, which is to collapse all the knuckles, and to use the movements that he used, which were really generated from throwing movements of the arm, nothing in the fingers. The fingers were all kind of collapsed. So a fascinating approach to exercises, and Peter's students are now all over the world, international careers, who have come from this, and he was a one-off. He really was a one-off, and I think he's very, very sadly missed in the piano world. So do try them out. You probably find, if you're a piano teacher, you will reject them to start with, but a little bit of perseverance and you'll find the gold in there.
Nicht viel schön.
Hello everybody, welcome here.
1, 2, 4, 3, 5, 2, 4. Wie geht es noch nicht?
So also, Professor Feuchtwanger, this is because always when you are showing something, you are singing. For you, the bel canto and singing is one of the most important parts in piano playing, right? If you can't sing, if you can't listen the melody, the phrase, you can't also play right.
I don't understand what the question is.
My question is, it's for you important the singing. When
If you're singing, yeah?
Yes, because you always making
It's
the
very
example
much
when
like
you are
singing.
and
I
you
always
sing.
invent words. Немножко разные вещи.
You invent a word.
Be nice to me. I wouldn't do be nice to me.
Yes, it's second day. It's just separate and detached. Right.
Die hat das. Also in Vienna, I give a course with Günther Reinhold, but at Bösendorfer. They had a Concertgram with a computer with them. You could slow down the action as much as you wanted without changing the pitch. So you heard the unevenness, like when I speak, I don't speak like, hello, how are you? To be or not to be or not to be, to be or not to be. I wouldn't say to be or not to be. But anyhow, it has a certain unevenness. As Chopin said, when you, quick pieces you must practice very slowly. Adagio is like a language.
Like a?
Like a language.
Language.
Come along. And you will see that composers have different fingerings because of the language. Because Couperin had very often this changed silent fingering because bonjour, you want the legato. Bach never. Oh yes, he did this. Yes. But he never did this. He did often this. Yeah. Wie geht es dir? Some in the fingering of Wilhelm Friedrich Bach, which Bach wrote in his book. You see that. So the language, wie geht es dir? Wie geht es? Yes, because Couperin had very often this changed silent fingering because bonjour, you want the legato. Bach never. He had, oh yes, he did this. Yes. But he never did this. He did often this. Yeah. Wie geht es dir? Some in the fingering of Wilhelm Friedrich Bach, which Bach wrote in his book. You see that. So the language, wie geht es dir? Wie geht es? Bonjour, madame. It's much more legato. And Philipp Emanuel Bach said, Couperin, who's usually so sensible or something like that, uses the silent change of the same note much too often and needlessly. Didn't understand that it was what he admired him, but he didn't understand the language asked for something else. So you Chopin again, his fingerings depend on the Polish language you don't speak, or maybe French.
The Polish language is always the same accent in the like in French, so it's not changing like, for example, in Italian or.
Very different. So
Yes, it's
it will help a lot
probably.
if one speaks Polish. First mazurka.
And mazurka is more probably the accent, the change of the accent. But mazurka is different also dances. So we have as well in some.
To this video today where I'm going to talk about the wonderful piano exercises of Peter Feuchtwanger. If you don't know who I am, I'm pianist Daniel Roberts, and I set up this page years ago with a colleague of mine who also studied with Peter Feuchtwanger, and now I think it's really time for more people to learn about his wonderful work since he sadly passed on 2 years ago. So the 18 exercises, these were created for pianists especially who are suffering from bad pains and strains in the body, and even conditions such as tendinitis and carpal tunnel syndrome. So the aim of them is to help you to play piano in such a natural way that you're just using the natural strength of the fingertips and the rest of the body is more relaxed, and the arms and the wrists are flexible and following the movements. So when you're playing music like, say, Tchaikovsky, like this, you don't feel stuck in the keys or tight, you don't feel tightness in the wrist and the arms as well. So I'm going to demonstrate some of the exercises so you understand this better. So the second exercise, this is where we start to move around the keys. So basically we do this. and then we rest here, and then we move down, and this is to start training your body and your mind to move around the keys, but keeping the arm free as well, just following the motion of the music, the passage in the music, or the sequence of notes in this case as well. And then you do the same in the left hand, and see how the hand is just level with the wrist, and the arm is in alignment. You may notice as well I'm sitting pretty low, because this works for me best to keep the body in alignment with the keys. And Peter would often encourage his students to sit very low to aid the use of this method in playing. So that is the second exercise, moving around. The fifth one then is a 5-note exercise, but with a difference. So we do it upside down, starting with the 5th finger, throwing the hands around. So hello Daniel Grimwood there, I see you watching. So that is the 5th exercise, again to keep that motion of the body fluid while playing. And then we go on to the 10th exercise, the raindrops as it was fondly called. This is to start practicing scales in a rapid motion like this. So it's basically catching a lot of notes with one natural motion. Like this. And then there's one, actually I skipped ahead of that, I apologise. So before that one as well, there's the famous parachute exercise for chords. And if I demonstrate here, so we want to play a chord, but not feeling tension again in the wrist or the arms and tightening up. Anticipating big chords, say like if you're playing Rachmaninoff as well, like this. So this is called the parachute, where you land the hands into the chord like this. So then you can play more from the fingertips while keeping again the arm aligned and everything in motion and ready to move around. So if you're playing like another Rachmaninoff like this, then you're not straining to reach those different chords as well and make different sounds and colours. And then the last exercise I want to demonstrate for you today is the mixing salad, as we call them. So it's using these circular motions of the hands. And the idea of this is we're doing fast repeated notes, but all with again one motion catching all those notes. So the aim, after doing these exercises for a while, a few months at least, then you begin to know intuitively how to put all these natural movements into the repertoire you're performing. Intuitively how to put all these natural movements into the repertoire you're performing. And Peter also composed wonderful pieces of music. This is one of his most famous ones, Tariqa one. And this uses the movements again and helps you to really incorporate them into the music you're playing so that the body can be free and you're not over tensing and straining. And even the most demanding piano works as well. So if you want to play pieces like Rachmaninoff concertos and Beethoven sonatas, Chopin etudes, you know, this works really well in all of those pieces as well. So I want to leave you just by inviting you to message me on this page. You can message through this Peter Feuchtwanger page.
Dum, dum, dum. Нет, ну нет. А, ну нет, пусть так. Да, где-то есть он сам.